Well, I've come to the end of the Avengers series for now, of the reboots, the relaunches, and the reviews of the number one issues. It was a fun little experiment when I got into it. I wasn't quite understanding at the time that I was committing to 40 plus issues of reboots and relaunches, but that's the way it goes. It's been a fun May. What a fun way to spend May. Anyway, let's talk about some of the findings and kind of the conclusions after doing all that. How does it look with the big picture in mind? Hey everybody, this is Perch. I decided to do this look at Avengers and kind of all the relaunches, and the reason I wanted to do that is I had in my head it'd be interesting to see through times how the company basically started a new series, though what has become their flagship series. I mean, you can argue the X-Men has been the bigger moneymaker over time, and it's true, it has actually factually it has, but the Avengers, with the movies and everything else, it's clearly the brand that the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Disney, holds most dear. Now we'll see over the next 10 years if the X-Men and how they handle that can rise to that same challenge. But the Avengers is their core brand. So looking at how kind of throughout the decades it was handled, it was treated, it was relaunched, was an interesting experiment for me. I was really curious how that would look and how it would play out over time. So it was fun to do. I'm glad that I got a chance to do that, and a couple conclusions kind of came out. I mean, first off, the obvious is the Avengers has a formula, and generally it's we have to start the issue with everybody scattered, and we're going to slowly create a big threat that's going to bring these disparate people together to once again save the world, and in many cases grudgingly. It was interesting to see it as a common theme that the Avengers. The first issue, the 1963 version, I kind of had the optimism and hope of this team coming together and doing something great. And almost every other relaunch, when the team has to come together, they're doing it kind of under duress, or they don't really want to do it, or some people do, some people don't. They're too tired for this. And it's an interesting kind of common theme. And it's interesting to watch writers kind of reset the board after every subsequent relaunch of, well, we tried our hardest, but now we're broke, or now we're rich, or, it was interesting to watch Tony Stark go from rich to poor to rich to poor to rich to poor, with every subsequent relaunch. It was, that was quite it just shows how they toy around with his character. And then there's the others. I mean, there's plenty of Avengers books. You can look at them and you can say, well, they just use the Avengers name to get some promotion or to get some added little buzz, like Occupy Avengers and Avengers Arena, and some of those books really were not Avengers books at all, but they were using that name to get some of that promotion and hopefully get, I'm sure, some sales. It's interesting to watch what they've done with characters like Hawkeye through the years, who went from being kind of cocky and then kind of, trying to do the right thing, but being kind of out of his depth, and then being more bitter, more serious, a complete joke. He's probably the character that has this common thread throughout the Avengers titles. Captain America, Steve Rogers' Captain America anyway, definitely had a kind of a theme that they would go with. It was interesting to watch them turn Sam Wilson into what I think they thought Captain America was. I mentioned this in the videos that from the very beginning, when Sam Wilson put on the Captain America costume and was in the Avengers, they started treating him like he was kind of the Black Steve Rogers, not Sam Wilson, not himself. He would be barking orders. He had kind of a more military tone and everything else, and it didn't fit who the character was prior to Captain America. Prior to him becoming Captain America. I said Captain America way too many times in the last 20 seconds. Thor as well is pretty consistent, and Iron Man's pretty consistent. Those three characters of the Trinity have always been very, throughout the years, behave and act largely the same. It's interesting to watch the Avengers. I think they've been very successful, if you look at the whole run, with younger characters and bringing in new faces. I think Avengers Academy, Avengers, the initiative with the Avengers. There we go. The Young Avengers. There's been some really solid teams. But what's also interesting is you see that as almost a gimmick in and of itself. It becomes the gimmick is create some new faces, put them in a team together, start to do some writing around it. But then it seems like they don't really know what to do after that. Once the plague once the issue is handled, once the threat or the problem is taken care of, they don't really know what to do with the characters. So a couple of years later, they introduce some new characters and they go through it again like a spin cycle, and that's peculiar. I think that it's just a lot of these reboots didn't need to happen. And I think the bigger picture, if you look back on a lot of the reviews, you'll see several instances where if they hadn't rebooted the title, I think it would have actually succeeded a lot better. I think the sales would have been stronger. I think the legacy of the issues would have mattered more. You look at the Remender series of Uncanny Avengers that rebooted with the series 1, 2, and 3. You look at Al Ewing in particular had multiple reboots that just for no apparent reason were rebooted, both with New Avengers and with Mighty Avengers. You saw even the Core Avengers title when Mark Waid took over, and then there was a reboot just a year later. That stuff, you definitely, as you look back on it now and you see it's a law of diminishing returns. I think it is one huge reason why sales have slipped to some extent. And it's not because fans are necessarily tied up on the legacy numbering, like they don't like to have things renumbered. It's that the reboot causes an interruption in marketing and approach. It's that it's not just that the title is starting with a new arc. It's that it feels jarring. It feels different. And so if you don't get a good head of steam up before you do that, it makes these stories all feel very limited. David Gabriel a few years ago made comments about how comics, the limited series designate was a death knell for comics. But I think it's not the label limited series. It's the nature of constantly restarting and all the rest. Because I think you really see that play out with the Avengers. You really see a negative impact to the reboots. It's interesting. I think also the 1963 issue, the first one, I mentioned during the video, it told a story in one. It felt like a long story, even though it really wasn't any larger than most of the comics. In fact, many of the Avengers relaunches were bonus sized, double sized, and had more pages to them, but felt shorter. It's by the time you got past the 90s, all those comics, almost to a one, felt really short. They felt like little tiny bits of a story. Some of that's decompressed storytelling. Some of that's kind of the need to explain more. Bendis wrote a book about dialogue and writing in comics and all the rest, and he definitely has a style. You either like it or you don't like it. But at a broader sense, comics, you compare them from the 60s to today, the comics today feel the need to really put out the breadcrumbs and explain every moment way more than they did back in the 60s and 70s. And you see that through the Avengers. And I think that's, why is that? Is it a dumbing down of the society that, we don't want people to trust their imagination? Is it easier? Is it the writers have an insecurity about just letting the story speak for itself in the images, and they feel like they have to script all of it? It's hard to say, but there's definitely, I think, a correlation between that with all the additional words, all the additional explaining. The comics feel much less. And it's interesting to look at comics from that perspective. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the series. It was fun to do, even though it was tough at times. I feel like the Final Fantasy music, the dun 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 dun, should be playing right about now, because it was a long road. But I hope you enjoyed it. I'll do this again. Probably I want to hop over and do something for DC next. I'm not going to do it right away. I'm going to take a good month off and reboot, as they say, for myself. But if you'd like me to do more, leave some comments below. Let me know some series you'd like me to try this on. I like looking at comic history. I'm increasingly alarmed that people in comics, both the creators and the fans, have kind of forgotten that comics existed before the year 2000. It doesn't feel like a lot of them remember that there are comics before then, and at first I was kind of a joke on my hand. And then lately I'm like, oh, actually, it's just there's not only is there no recognition, there's no interest. I've met now comic creators who say if it's if it's before the year 2000, I really have no interest in knowing what's going on there. And it's like, wow, way to give away one of the most powerful parts of comics, the ongoing story, the ongoing legacy. What a weird decision to make. But I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you looked through it. And yeah, like I said, leave me a comment below. Thank you again for watching all that. Like, subscribe, introduce to a friend, point them at that playlist of all the Avengers videos. I think they'll like it, and would love to have their feedback on it. Most importantly, thanks for listening. Thanks for being with me along on this journey. It has been fun.